Good morning. I'm talking to Rick Jones, who's president of Cal Pacific Mortgage. Good morning, Cal.
Good morning.
I don't know too much about you. We've had a couple conversations. I know you're president of your company, and last year you managed not only to run an office, but did $73 million and 237 loans, which I find interesting. I'm most anxious to get into this topic at some point. The year before you did $62 million. Very few people that I've ever talked to in an interview, and I've done over 70, well over 70, have actually increased volumes, and you're running a company on top of it. So I'm looking forward to this. But before we actually get into some of the technical aspects of the business, everybody kind of likes to know where people came from and how they got in the business, and so why don't we start there?
All right. Well, I actually fully intended to sell something pretty much all my life, and I just didn't know what. And when I started off in this business, it really came kind of by accident. I was working for a bank while I was going to college part-time. It was a bank called Home Federal Savings.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
A big bank here in the county. And I worked part-time for them as a teller in new accounts, and basically just loved, the customer interaction, but I couldn't stand not really being able to sell something. So I finally got my manager to put me off the teller line and put me down in new accounts. Well, Home Fed came up with this contest one year where the more dollars you brought in and the services you sold, you got these bonus points, and these bonus points were good in this catalog. And this catalog had just everything from water beds to radios to bicycles to everything in it. And I looked at this catalog and I said, well, this is free money to me. And so I immediately went down to new accounts, and there wasn't a person that walked in the door that I didn't practically jump on and try to get to my window. And I sat there and I would sell them pretty much everything that was in the brochure. By the time they left, they didn't know really what had hit them. But I was chalking up so many points, and the more points I chalked up, I was just getting so pumped and so excited about it. I thought, this is great. So it was while I was at San Diego State. I grew up pretty much in San Diego.
Mm-hmm. What year was this, by the way?
I graduated from San Diego State in 1982.
Okay.
And so I was working for Home Fed from 1977 on, which is when I graduated from high school. I went straight into the bank right from high school.
Wow, very unusual.
And I stayed there basically all through my college career because they were very supportive, and I really had a goal. I wanted to get out, get on the management training program, and start something. So I really powered through college. I finished in about 3.5 years, and I did winter sessions, summer sessions, but I was motivated just to get in and get out because I wanted to get on with things. And so after this event of selling all this stuff, one of the guys I'd sold to was a financial planner. And he was so blown away by how I handled myself with him and basically sold him all these different services while we were sitting at the new accounts window that, you really ought to get into doing this professionally. And so I didn't think a lot about it, but he invited me to come to a few meetings of these presentations that he did. And he was selling, in that time, it was a big thing. They were selling financial packages with trust deed sales and all these different things. And it was just way beyond me, but it was just an opportunity to sell. And so what ended up happening was I graduated from college, and this guy kind of worked with me for a few years, kind of mentoring me in the sales process. But when I graduated from college, I went on the management training program for Home Federal, and at that time I had decided that I did not want to be a branch manager in a bank. I mean, nothing was, and no offense to anybody out there who's a branch manager in a bank, but nothing to me was more boring.
I'd appreciate if you give offense. I mean, they don't make any money. They're not motivated,
Yeah, to me it was a babysitter.
No kidding.
And
sure.
I couldn't stand it. I remember there were times where I was sitting as an acting branch manager, because when you're on the training program, that's what you have to do. I would sit there actually and look out the window and my watch, and I would start falling asleep in my desk, because there just wasn't anything to do. And I'm sure there are things that they can do, but it wasn't for me.
And now I think that, not to interject, but it does point up some of the differences, the classical animosity and resentment between banks and mortgage bankers, and the difference how mortgage bankers are hustlers and why they've done so well.
Well, yeah, but you have to realize that I spent 6 of my years at Home Fed hustling loans for that bank.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the best at it.
You're an anachronism.
Yeah.
I got news for you.
So what happened was I went to as soon as I came off the training program, they decided to put me on, because I told them I wouldn't go manage a branch. They decided to put me over into loans, and I became an underwriter. And an underwriter is just about as bad as a branch manager. And I love underwriters, but they're mechanical, they're strategic, very calculated, and there's no interaction. So I would sit there looking at these files going, oh, my God, how am I going to deal with this? So I finally walked into my manager at the time, and I said, listen, this is killing me. I got to go sell something. So either you find me a job where I can sell, or I'm out of here. I'm going to go to work for Xerox or IBM. I'll take some entry-level position somewhere, and I'm going to sell something. And I said, I'll tell you what, we're doing a lot of auto loans. I said, I guarantee you that if you let me off for 2 hours a day, I'll go down to all the auto dealerships around here, and I will tenfold increase our auto loan business if you'll just let me get out and sell for 2 hours a day. And I said, if I prove to you that I can do that, then I want to go up the ladder and I want to create a program for me to start selling loans for this company. At that point, Home Fed had no outdoor salespeople for loans. There was no loan company or no loan consultants. And so I said, if I can do that, then I want to get a commission. And I said, on top of that, then I'll go out and try doing some real estate loans too. Now, mortgage brokers were available at that time, but they weren't dominating the market like Home Feds were.
Yeah, and that's why they
had no sales culture for their loan side.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, let me just prove to you that it can be done, and if that works, then we're going to develop something. So 90 days go by, and they could not believe what I brought in. I mean, we went from doing like 25 or 30 auto loans in this branch to about 200, okay? And I basically went out to the dealers. I brought cars into the branch. I had cars on the lawn. We were doing all these promotions, and I mean, it was just a revolving door. And these auto dealers were going, "This is awesome." So then we turned that into some real estate. I did some real estate sales, and we got more real estate loans. And so after the 90 days, I went to my branch manager. We looked at the numbers, and he said, "Okay, you got a deal." So we talked it up the ladder, and before you knew it, about 60, 90 days later, they created a department, which I was part of, and there were 4 of us in the state that they hired as loan consultants to go out and sell loans. And we were the first ones Home Fed started with. And that was it. And at that point, they really didn't have any training. It was, okay, well, you know how to do loans. Here are the real estate offices. Go to town.
Good luck.
And that's how it started. But
yeah, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
I was so pumped up about it, I couldn't even stand it. I mean, when I walked into the real estate office, I was like that dog with the tail wagging and the tongue hanging out, going, okay, where's your loans? Come on, give me something. And the realtors were kind of shocked, but I just was very aggressive, and I was young and just wanted to work. So that's kind of how I fell into the business, and then from that.
When did you start? When did you start? What year did you start your company?
I started my company in 1991.
In 91. And how many loan officers do you have with you?
I have 26.
Mm-hmm.
And I have...
how many branches?
There's 5 branches, and of that, there are probably 10 of those loan officers are in our branches, and the other are internal.
I see. Well, let me ask you, kind of bring this up to date. And the first question I wanted to ask you is that based on your vast experience, and you really have experience in the banking side too, which I find interesting, what are some of the profound changes you see out there versus 10 years ago that loan officers have to confront today in dealing with realtors specifically?
Well, dealing with realtors, 10 years ago, it was easy for a realtor. The realtor could basically call one of 3 banks that dominated the market, and that's where the loan went. It was simple. And if you worked for, in my county, if you worked for Great American Federal or San Diego Federal before that, Home Fed or Cal Fed, one of the big banks, or Savings and Loans, or Bank of America at the time, it was simple. We all produced a rate sheet every single week, and those 4 rate sheets were delivered to real estate offices every week, The product was basically a variable-based product because fixed rates were high, and that was it. And what happened is those companies went away.
Sure.
And with the going away of those, it forced loan originators to become more knowledgeable about their marketplace. It forced realtors to depend more on the expertise of someone rather than the name of the bank. And that shifted the whole paradigm, because even though you might have a bank who now was hiring in a loan officer, you knew that those loan officers were green. They didn't really know how to sell yet. They didn't understand the product, and they didn't really understand the psychology of the buyer. And I think, in my opinion, understanding the psychology of the buyer is the most critical part of the sales process. And unless you understand exactly what that client's needs are and wants and desires, and you understand what features your products are going to give that client and the benefits that those features will produce, there's no way you're going to make a sale. Well, you're not going to take somebody who's been a teller or a new accounts rep that just got promoted to a loan consultant for a branch that is going to understand that at that point, not when they're competing against someone like myself or others who have done this for 20 years and have seen these people day in and day out and understand what they want. And so I think tying in the incredible knowledge diversification that you have to have now, because the way the banks are now, even though there are underlying investors that buy the business, every bank and every underwriter is different, and they have their own little idiosyncrasies and niches. And keeping abreast of all those now is so much more difficult than it was 10 years ago, because the players are multiplied by 10.
Well, in addition to that, you also have realtors that, I don't know how it is out there, I suspect the same as in the Washington metropolitan area. You have a lot of CBAs now,
right.
And they have fundamentally changed the access portion of getting into realtors' office now by loan officers.
No question of that, but it's interesting because I've probably been approached 20 times by these companies, by real estate companies, to set up those CBAs. And then every time I've denied them. And the reason being is I didn't want to create an example of only working for one company. I
Sure.
didn't want that relationship to
It can
hurt
taint
me,
you, sure.
Unilaterally with the real estate community out there.
But and no question that it would, too. You're perceived as working for a large realtor when your loan officers go into other companies right away. They're behind the eight ball.
That's right. So I have tried to create that boutique style mortgage brokerage that has a law firm mentality. Okay, you come to me as the specialist, and I am good at it, and I will give you the most competitive price with the most knowledge and experience that you can get. Okay. What I didn't want to be is a clearinghouse. I don't want to be a huge bank. I don't want to work on such a tight margin that I've got to do huge volume to do it. I mean, my goal is to be that boutique-style lender.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by doing it that way, I can be a boutique to Prudential, to Coldwell Banker, to Century 21, to whoever, and regardless of their CBAs that they have in there, my experience will supersede the power agents and get to them regardless of who they've got sitting out front.
Well, let me take it down a notch, though, down to a loan officer level. What exactly, for a loan officer out there, someone who's listening, that likes what you're saying, how would they implement that kind of boutique strategy as a loan officer out there?
Well, I think what a loan officer has to do is they have to focus on the right thing. The problem most loan officers have when they start in this business is they're starving. They need money. So what is the pure goal of that loan officer in getting the loan? To pay their car payment, to pay their house payment, to pay their rent. So they focus on the wrong thing. What they're focusing on is the end result, which is getting paid, which is not focusing on the beginning of the transaction, which is helping the client. If they focused on helping the client first, the money will come automatically. And it will multiply, because by helping the client first, that client's going to feel like you took care of them. You weren't just trying to make a buck. And by doing so, they're going to go tell somebody else, hey, this guy really helped me. Now, for people that are starting in this business, if they could, I don't care if they took, $20,000 or $50,000 and borrowed it against something, and they put it in an account and said, listen, I'm not going to make a dime for the first 6 months I do this business. I don't care. I'll do my loans for free. But if they took that pressure off of them and they said, okay, I can go out and I can work, and my sole concern is to wow that client, help that client. And you'll hear me refer to wow 100 times probably in this interview. But to me, that's an integral part of my philosophy. I heard Todd Duncan or somebody say it one day, and now, I mean, when I heard that, I brought it back and I put it on my computer. But everything that I do, and everything that I say, and everything that my staff says, and everything that my loan officers say, when they finish saying it, or they finish doing it, or they finish acting it, whoever the recipient is should say, wow. Now, if you have that mentality, you're going to get more business. It won't make a difference, okay? Because the client comes away going, wow, that was cool. Wow, that was great.
You know what I like about this is that you're the first person in 70-plus interviews I've done who really has talked about something that's out there that a lot of people actually don't like to talk about, branch managers, regionals, whatever, and that is that first 6-month period and the fact that most loan officers don't have a lot of money, and you're right. If they could just hang in there and do it the right way.
Right.
I told the story, so I'm not going to repeat it, in another interview of someone when I was a regional manager with Travelers who really got to it about the 8-month period, and he really could have done well. He was a gift from the gods in the way he looked. He was a nice fellow and everything, and he just couldn't get over that hump, and eventually, disintegrated. It was a crime.
And, I've seen it 100 times. I mean, loan officers will come to me, and they want to come to work for me because they see what I do and they want to learn. And I basically tell them, you have to have staying power. So you can't focus on the wrong thing. And I've seen the loan officers that will walk into my office and say, I'm worried about this $200 credit that I got to give back to the client, or this appraisal that I didn't disclose, and now I don't know what to do, or
right.
I've lost a quarter point on this deal and I want to pass it on to the buyer, and I look at him and I go, get a clue.
Right.
Get a clue. That is a small fish in the pond. You need to think about this bigger picture. What is the client going to say after you act? What are they going to think after you act?
Yeah.
And what long-lasting impression are you going to give them?
And the realtor, who's going to get the big word, too.
That's right. So think about what your reaction would be if you were on the receiving end of what you're going to do. And then act. And if you truly feel then that it's the right thing to do, and that the client feels that it's the right thing to do, he's going to offer. They'll offer to pay, if that's the case. But it better be a joint decision, not something that you make and dictate to the client.
Right. And there are professional ways to get people to come around to that, too.
Right.
Simple things like looking him in the eye and saying, I messed up. I made a mistake. If you feel like I'd be happy to pick up this, and most of the time people step right up to the plate and say, not a problem.
Well, and I like to put it in perspective for people too, for loan officers that are starting. Let's just say you're talking about a $200,000 loan, and you had quoted 1.5 points, and all of a sudden something goes wrong. Your pricing goes away. The underwriter counters to a different program. Everything kind of, goes backwards, and you're forced to cut your commission in half. Okay, well, now you're making 0.75 points on a $200,000 loan. I look right at the loan officer and I said, would you have worked on a $100,000 loan for 1.5 points? Yeah. Okay, then. Look at it that way. Look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Change the paradigm.
Right, exactly.
You just made 1.5 points on a $100,000 loan. Hallelujah. Great.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Exactly. So don't think of it that way. Think about what's right for the client, what's right for you afterwards. Okay?
You know, you're into an area that I've always found fascinating, even though you haven't said the magic words, and that's negativity. And loan officers in this business, and even managers too. You know, when you get negative and really down, you really have to get rid of those people. It's like a cancer.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when I started off in this business, you know, I remember when I used to go out and make sales calls, okay? You know, to me, the realtor business was critical, okay? And I have done very, very well with the realtor business because I've made the realtors my friends. I do business with people that I like, and I work in a community that I like. Because of that, I'm doing business with my friends, and that's what they've become. And there's a mutual respect. I'm not seen as a second-class citizen. I'm seen as a peer that helps them and myself achieve whatever goals we've set for ourselves. Bottom line. So, in the beginning, I'll never forget when I was trying to break into some of these offices, as you know, get closed, and they don't want to see you, and the second you walk in the door, everybody puts their head down and picks up a phone so that they don't have to talk to you.
It's been 25 years. I forgot that little part.
I'll never forget. I made myself this tape, this tape, and I had songs like the Pointer Sisters, I'm so excited, you know, and I'd have all these songs on this tape. And on my way to the real estate office, I'd listen to this tape, and I'm bouncing off the walls of my car as I'm driving up, and I would sit in my car, I'd pull into the parking lot, and I'd sit in my car, and I'd listen to this tape, and I'm jumping up and down and moving all around, and I'd get out of my car, and I made it a point. I would walk in, I would get out of my car so fast that I'd almost slam my hands in the door. I'd run inside the office real quick. I'd drop something off, and I'd throw it at the receptionist like, here, let me give this to you, and then I'd run out. I'd not say a word to anybody. And people would go, whoa, who was that? And sure enough, I mean, they would say, what was that guy doing? Who was he? What did he do? Because it was like in and out. And it would elicit a response. And they would go, that guy must be busy. He must be really, really busy. He didn't even have time to even say anything to us. And I would make a point, if a realtor called me about anything, I mean anything, I would never mail it. I would never call them back. I would type it on a piece of paper, and then I would drive to the real estate office and run in and drop it on their desk like that and run out. And I wouldn't give them a chance to talk. Gotta go. Things are happening. Call me later. Call me.
Love you.
Love you. See ya. Bye. Now, meanwhile, I'd go back to my desk and I'd tap my fingers. And I'd wait for the call. And sure enough, they'd call. Wow, what's going on? Are you busy right now? Yeah, I'm really busy. I can't tell you.
But I got time for you.
But I got time for you. And sure enough, it started creating this aura of, hey, maybe we should be doing business with Rick Jones. He obviously has got something going on. And before you knew it, it was exactly that. I didn't have time to talk to him because we had so much going on. And I would run in, I would talk to 4 or 5 agents, give them the information that they needed, and I'd run out because I had to get going. And then it wasn't a matter of me asking for the business, it was they asking for the business. And the paradigm changed. And it became an issue where I was the one they wanted to talk to, and now I have to block that time for them, which is what you strive for.
What about loan officers, though, in today's environment? You know, I think it's, and your point's well taken, certainly. It's one thing to be up and infectious, you know, and that does rub off. But there's more to the game today, I think.
Oh, there absolutely is.
And I wonder if you
can't
go
do
over
it that way anymore.
Well, actually, I would politely disagree. I think it's a major component in being able to do it. Maybe you're just a little too self-depreciating, but I find that very important. But there are some other things I think that go into the equation too, and I wonder if you go over a couple of those.
Well, I think today you have to be an educational tool for everybody, not just your client, but for the realtor, for the escrow officer, for the attorney that you talk to, because you're really on the front line to everything that's going on. I mean, I used to liken, you know, a loan officer to the hub of the wheel. Everybody in business likes to think that they're the hub of the wheel, okay? They're the center of the universe, and there's all these components that go on the wheel, but the wheel turns, but you really kind of control the transaction from the middle, okay? And really, I do believe that the loan officer does. And I don't say that. I mean, an escrow officer would like to think that that's exactly what their job is. And yes, in their world, that's probably true. But the loan officer really has to play kind of middle ground to so many different parts of the transaction. I mean, with the client, the realtors on both sides, the escrow officer, the title company, the underwriter. You know, you have so much that you have to deal with that you really have to understand the motivations and the issues of everybody. Okay, now, most importantly, you have to understand the product. And if you don't understand the product, you're not going anywhere. And what really has to happen is you've got to create value to these people. I don't care who it is, whether it's the realtor or the escrow officer or the client. It doesn't matter. You've got to create value. Now, how are you going to create value in today's marketplace? You have to understand everything, okay? And be confident that what you're eliciting as far as responses go is right. You can't be second-guessing anything. So invariably, you have to be on top of the game all the time with product. Now, you certainly start to create niches for yourself in areas that you work in, so the product knowledge becomes second nature. But until it becomes second nature to you, you cannot do what you need to do, which is sell to the person, okay, first, and then bring the product in. And it's like anything. You have to be able to read body language. You have to be able to understand what's going on with your borrower and what they're really trying to buy. And if you're worried about what your product is and how you're going to sell it, you're not going to look for those clues and get in. You're never going to make it past first base.
You know, that's kind of interesting you said that, because that's an area actually that's never been covered, and that is, you live and you can live by the nuance of an arched eyebrow, a smile. There are ways to read people's body language to your advantage.
Absolutely. That, I think, is one of the most critical things. And as I said earlier in the interview, you have to understand the psychology of people, and you have to understand what to look for. I mean, I took a class. It was a Xerox training class.
Listing class. Okay.
Oh, my goodness. It was probably one of the best things that Home Federal ever did for me.
That's incredible you said that. I actually have to interject here. When I was a young kid, I'd been an Army lieutenant.
Right.
And at 66 to 68, and, it was kind of ugly. Got out, sold computers for IBM. And do you know that they used to send people up to New York for their training up on Lex Avenue across from P.J. Clark's. And the first thing that they taught us, they took like 3 days, and we took that Xerox listing course.
Isn't that unbelievable?
You're the first person I've ever run into that took it. It's incredible.
It was awesome. And that really changed my outlook and helped me focus on what I needed to focus on. So what it made me do was make my product second nature, so that I could listen to the client and know that whatever the client said, that I could reach into my product bag and pick out something that fit that client's needs and know how to then make it happen, okay? With authority, with conviction, without the client even remotely second-guessing whether I was right or wrong, okay? But it's because I had it there, and I knew it, and because I knew the product, the client's totally fixed on what it is I'm saying, and I'm talking to them. So I think a loan officer today, and as difficult as it might be to read Fannie Mae guidelines, I'm not telling you have to read Fannie Mae guidelines, but you have to understand what the features are of the products that you're selling, and understand how they benefit the client.
Right.
That's the key. Understand the features and know how it benefits the client.
You know, I've forgotten years ago at IBM, they used to take you up and put you in front of like 30 of your peers. And, it was a horrible experience. And they give you a pencil.
Right.
And they would say, okay, give me a 20-minute talk on a pencil.
The features of this pencil.
And I got news for you. You learn to sell features and benefits real fast.
Exactly.
Now, this is a can opener. The reason this can opener is so unique is, and the benefit to you is, A lot of loan officers out there really are not well, and it's not necessarily their fault, too, because they don't have access to it, but they just don't have the grounding in sales, basic sales techniques that you need, how to get to a final close. You mean to say, Mr. Jones, if we could have gotten this at a quarter point less, you would have taken this today? Well, yeah, I would have. Okay, well, let me make a call to my manager, and you call the weather and say, okay, we got it. And now they're a liar or a buyer.
Right. So I think today, if clients can sit in front of a salesperson, a loan officer that is comfortable with the product and understands it, then that loan officer can project and deliver what the client needs in a very, very comfortable and social way. And that's what you have to sell. That's how you have to sell.
I want to change direction just a second. It's very tangential to this, though, and that is my question to you, understanding what you said so far. How do you transfer this, and how do you enable your loan officers to pick up this body of knowledge? Do you have a mentoring system, or how do you go about doing it? Perhaps you just hire people that are good and have experience and don't even have to deal with it.
You're right there. I mean, I try not to hire new loan officers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a loan officer that works for me that doesn't have a minimum of 5 years of experience when they started here. Okay? And what I do is I tell them, go out, work for a bank. Spend a year, 2 years, learning product. Then come back to me and I'll teach you how to sell. Okay? I don't have a formalized training program that can sit there and teach you product. Now, what's happened, and for lack of a better term, I've become the trainer for some of my loan officers in the way that they'll come in and they'll work for me as an assistant. Okay?
Mm-hmm, sure.
And they'll see more in 1 month than they'll see in 5 years doing it on their own. Okay? So they'll come in and they'll work for me for a year, and I will grind them during that year at searching the products out, finding the parameters, understanding why. I grill them every day on, I won't tell them the answer. I'll make them tell me the answer. If they can't tell me the answer, they got to go find it. Now, I'll know the answer the whole time, and I'll be 10 steps ahead of them already, but I got them out there working around and doing busy work. And eventually they learn it, okay?
Now, your best law schools, a lot of them teach by the Socratic method, which is pretty much what you're doing. Questions and answers.
Right.
Go find the answer to this, or what do you think of that? What do you mean by that? Give me 3 reasons.
Right.
That kind of exchange.
It's interesting because I will have a problem. I'll know the answer. I'll pull them in and I'll say, okay, here's the situation. What would you do with this deal, and why? Why are you picking that bank? Oh, well, what makes you think about that program? Okay, and I take them through the process so they can understand. Now, mind you, they've probably sat in my office and listened to me do it 100 times, okay? But that's one person. Now, my loan officers, I have sales meetings every other week, okay, where we'll sit down and we do what we call a round table. And that round table is strictly a forum of talking about our business. We spend the first hour, a half-hour segments, of listening to presentations by a couple of our key lenders to give them product knowledge. Then after the product knowledge, I set up at the front of the table and I say, okay, now how would you use that knowledge to sell to a client? What is the features of that loan that you can turn around and sell on the street? And we go over scenarios and we review different products and programs and figure out ways to market that. And I say, okay, here's your marching orders. Go look for this type of client with this type of situation, and this is the way you can use this deal. So we start educationally, and then we take it into real-life scenarios. And the first thing that I will do is I'll go through, because I'll already know what those situations are, because I'll probably have used them before I ever invite them to come in and speak at one of my meetings. And I will say, okay, now let me tell you how I used that product just in the last 30 days. 5 times, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And this is how it worked. And this is the deals that it got me. And this is how the transactions went down. This is what the client came in with, and this is what they left with. Okay?
It sounds to me that this is really nothing more. I'm not belittling it by the word either. Nothing more than teaching by the case method.
You have to.
Sure.
I mean, what better example can an owner of a company set than getting out in the street and doing It's like a soldier, you know, going into battle. He doesn't want his lieutenant or his captain to say, "Okay, march on out there and shoot somebody." He wants the captain right next to him, okay, or the sergeant, whoever. I mean, you have to lead by example. You got to be able to say, "Okay, guys, this is how you do it," and they have to feel confident that you know enough about what you're doing to go out there and do it yourself, and you're going to deal with the same fears, the same anxieties, the same issues every single day that they're dealing with, and you're overcoming them. And by doing that, it makes them say, "Oh, I can do this. It'll happen." So when I was working for HomeFed, after I had proven to them that I had done a great job at selling, I was their #1 loan officer 5 years in a row for the state, you know, I basically got promoted to a sales manager position, okay? All right, I couldn't sell anymore. What was I supposed to do? I was supposed to teach people how to sell. It killed me.
For 1/5 the money.
Yeah, exactly. I said, wait a minute, you cut my salary and put me in a desk. That's the thing I told you I didn't want.
You just have a better business card.
Right. So that lasted about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to my boss and I said, "Listen, I can't stand it. These people are killing me." And I said, "I can tell them what to do, but then they don't do it. I want to get out there and do it myself. So hire somebody else, put them in my spot, and I want to go back out in the street." And I actually did more for the sales department by getting on the street, because then they could see what I was doing and emulate that than me teaching them. So when I opened this company, every single person that's come to work for me, I've basically told them, I'm going to lead by example here. I'm not going to come in here and I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to do it. And if you choose to do what I do, you'll be successful.
This begs a question, and we're kind of getting towards the end of our interview, and I above all wanted to ask you this one question, and that is how you can run so many people, so many branches, and still knock out, not only knock out the volumes that you're doing, but actually increase your volumes from a year that 98 was a great year for everybody. You could blink and do something, but 99 was a little bit different year, and I suspect you're doing better this year. How do you explain that?
Well, I think fundamentally it's that you have to hire good people, and you have to do what you do best and delegate the rest. That's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And I have in fact, the person who hired me at Home Federal 20 years ago runs my office now. Okay? I recruited her away after I opened my company. I went to her and I said, "Listen, you need to come work with me." Now she runs the operations of the company. The salespeople, they're all self-starters. I've hired people who have owned their own companies and that were tired of owning their own companies but just wanted to be affiliated with something good. So these people are self-starters already. They don't look to me to manage them.
Mm-hmm.
They look to me to lead them. So what I do is that. Now, staffing is handled operationally by a strong operations manager. So it allows me to go out and do what I do. I have my own processing team, my own marketing person, and that's my arena. Everybody else in my company looks at my team and says, "I want to get to that level. I want to be able to hire those bodies. I want to be able to have that kind of system." And that's what they aspire to. So I basically have gone out and I focus full strong on my business every day. I allocate probably maybe an hour a day to operational, inspirational, outside of my business plan events, and my business plan being my own personal production plan, to deal with loan officers that have questions, to deal with strategies and talking to loan officers that need help, need direction, operations issues that need to be dealt with within the company. And for the most part, that's about all I have to spend.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows me to focus basically 90% of my day, and when I work, it's a 10-hour, 11-hour day. But it allows me to spend the other 9 hours, let's just say, on dealing with my business, my clients.
You know, you and I were talking shortly, a little bit off tape before we started, and we're talking about how some other people who, people like David Jaffe and Mark Klein, how they have done the same kind of volumes and doing the same sort of things that you're doing by creating systems, putting systems in place that make it happen. And I think there's a lesson throughout this for, and I'm directing my comments to those people out there that are, doing 20 million, 25 million, and they want to get up to that 40, 50, 60 million dollar level. They're never going to be able to do it unless they put some systems in place.
That is absolute, and I will tell you, I participated in a group called the Masters Program that was run by Todd Duncan.
Yes,
this was 4 years ago, I believe. 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And before that, I was the kind of guy that ran around with yellow stickies everywhere, okay? I had prequals on notepads. I had little names and phone numbers on pieces of paper in my car. I mean, I was, as much business as I was doing, it was amazing that I was able to accomplish what I accomplished and not just lose my head. And I learned through going to Todd's seminars that I started going to about 5 or 6 years ago how important it was to develop a system. And I did that. And we basically created a system. I don't even use ACT. I don't use Goldmine. I use a much inferior product to that, and a product called ACE, which is really nothing more than a contact manager. And it allows me to keep track of everything on a day-to-day basis and my clients. And I have my team all linked up within the same, system, so that I can send out messages and take notes, and everybody can read what I'm doing. And I've become much more computer literate over the last 5 years, and that absolutely has been integral to my success. There's no way you can handle the kind of volume that we handle and not have something like that.
Yeah, I was lucky. I sold computers for IBM, so I had a grounding in it years ago. But you're right. I don't think I talked to anybody at a pretty high level that's not technically astute or hires people that are.
You have to be. You have to be now. And now with the infusion of the internet and e-commerce, which I'm not trying to become a part of, I'm trying to stay more away from. But I use the e-commerce methods to help facilitate my clients' needs, okay? If a client is in Texas and needs to do a loan application, I'm not going to Federal Express them. I'm going to get them on my website. And they're going to do the application online. I'll download it, and I'll send them everything after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
That's convenience. And what I'm doing is helping the client facilitate their transaction.
Sure.
Without having to go through the old methods. And I will use it. I will not broadcast out and try to sell people using a website, but I know people do. But I want to be the boutique. I have the business contacts, so my website and my technology has got to be something that I can use to help service my clients' needs and provide them stellar service.
Right. And service level is what it's all about in business, is creating that higher service level to be able to go from a 90 to a 95% service level.
Right.
And higher. And a lot of people don't understand, to go from a 90 to 92% service level may cost you $100,000. To go from 92 to 93 could be $1 million. But at some point, you need to get as much bang for the buck and give that service level. I think I'm going to end on this point. This is wonderful, and your points are very. You're not only enthusiastic, which comes across, but you make very valid points in the process, and you understand the process. And I'd like to think that getting that good background working for banks gives you some insight in how to run your business. So I want to thank you so much, and we'll keep in touch. And have a nice day, Rick.
Thank you very much.